Welcome to the Pursuit of Light podcast. My name is Nate Byers and I will be your host today. If you'd like to learn more about myself, you can. I am on Instagram at Nate Byers. And if you'd like to learn more about this podcast, you can on our website at pursuelight.org. If you would like to view the video version of these podcasts, you can on YouTube. Just search Nate Byers and they should pop up for you. And if you're listening on an Apple device, if you wouldn't mind just leaving us a review, you can just tap the stars. But if you'd like to write something, you can, and I will definitely read it. And here at Pursue Light, we are a listener-funded podcast. So that means the funding for this podcast comes through you, the listener. So if you'd like to donate and support us, you can on our website at pursuelight.org/donate. So today in episode 7, Reverence for Life, we're going to be looking over Genesis 9:1-6. Verse 1. Then God blessed Noah and his sons, saying to them, "Be fruitful and increase in number, fill the earth. The fear and the dread of you will fall upon the beasts of the earth and all the birds of the air, upon every creature that moves along the ground, and upon all the fish of the sea. They are given unto your hands. Everything that lives and moves will be food for you. Just as I have given you the green plants, I now give you everything. But you must not eat meat that has its lifeblood still in it. And for your lifeblood, I will surely demand an accounting, and I will demand an accounting from every animal and every man too. I will demand an accounting for the life of his fellow man. Whoever sheds the blood of man, by man shall his blood be shed. For the image of God has God made man." So this is not a very long passage that we're reading. I only read a portion of chapter 9. If you'd like to continue, I encourage you to go and read the full chapter. But we're only going to be looking over these 6 verses. So it may be a shorter episode. So here in chapter 9, we're going to be reading the first 6 chapters of it. I encourage you to go through and read the whole chapter because it is very interesting. But here in the first couple verses, he's blessing and giving a commandments basically to Moses or to Noah and his family. He's also giving a curse basically to all the animals. So here in verse 2, he's talking about how they will become fearful of man. And so it's almost like that the animals weren't afraid of men before the flood, and that we were friendly. Some scholars believe that we were actually vegetarians before the flood, and that after the flood, or the flood caused us this curse that God put on the animals, made us become meat-eating beings. Because here in verse 3, it says, "Everything that lives and moves will be food for you. Just as I have given you the green plants, I now give you everything." So that's almost showing that there was this idea that we were given green plants when we got kicked out in the Garden of Eden, and that that's how we were supposed to sustain ourselves. And now that the flood happened, now God's going, okay, now you can eat animals. But he did have some, I wouldn't say restrictions, but some commands on how we are supposed to go about doing this. And the command for how we were supposed to eat meat was this idea, or was to not eat meat with its lifeblood still in it. And many of the Jewish cultures and Jewish people still do drain the blood out of an animal before they eat it. But the idea, some scholars believe that the idea of this draining the blood out of it was God's way of kind of not quite prophesizing, and it wasn't quite a metaphor, but he was showing us how eventually that he was going to send his son to die on the cross and shed his blood. And it was just his way of kind of hinting at it, I guess. So verses 4 through 6, God's going through in this section, God's going through and telling us how we need to be more reverent for our fellow humans, and that each life is valuable. And the reason that it's valuable is because we are created in the likeness of God. Every man, not some people, there was no skin color, no sex, nothing would have to do with how you were created. Everyone was created in God's image. And that meant that all life, since it was human life was created in God's image, that we are supposed to have reverence for it. The reason that he's kind of like pushing us or kind of pointing towards this idea of being more reverent to human life or to our fellow human life is because he wanted a less violent age, a new era. The previous generations before Noah and before the flood, they were very violent and evil, and humans were just running around in our sinful nature, in our human nature, and we were just causing mayhem upon the face of the earth. And God really tried to instill this idea of having reverence for every human life. He knew that we are imperfect and that we could never meet perfection, but he tried to instill in us this new idea of being more reverent, so that way hopefully in the future for the generations after Noah would be less violent. I don't know if you picked up on this, but in this section of the chapter that we were reading, the idea of capital punishment was actually established here. Before the time and before the flood, God directly interacted and punished humans. You've seen it with Cain and Abel. A lot of times scholars believe that the father was kind of like that, the ruler over each family, that he was kind of in charge of the punishment. But God interacted directly before the flood. If he saw something that you didn't like, and that was the whole reason of the flood, is that he was punishing the people that were living here, is that they weren't living like in God's, the way that God would wanted them to live, and so he would punish them. And after the flood is when this idea of capital punishment began. That God was kind of sharing his power of punishment in establishing political authority. Before the flood, right now we have this. In the United States, we have a judiciary system that sets before you, if you commit a crime or breaking a law that was set, the judiciary system creates a punishment for you. Before the flood, there was no system for that. If you broke God's law, God would punish you. There was no one else that did that. But after the flood, God shared that with man, and he set man up to have power and to create that system like we have now. And later in chapter 9, if you continue to read, when he creates the rainbow and stuff, that's him creating a vow or covenant with us, saying that he won't just do a mass punishment anymore, and that he's giving us that power to rule, to create political powers like we have now. Thank you for tuning in to episode 7. I hope you learned something, you took away something, God brought to light something that you found interesting. I encourage you to go through and read all of chapter 9, because we only read a portion, and that's why it was kind of a shorter episode for today. But I encourage you to go through and read the whole chapter. It's pretty interesting stuff. So again, thank you for tuning in. Please leave us a review if you would like, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.